Margo McDiarmid joins me from Ottawa with more on that. Margo, what's the big message from the government today, post-budget?
Carol, essentially, both the Prime Minister and his Finance Minister, Bill Morneau, are pushing this budget really hard. And it's partly because they really are breaking with tradition, not only from 10 years of a Conservative government, but also with the previous Liberal government, and that is working towards a balanced budget. So they're out there, they're fanning across this city, and they're sending cabinet ministers out across the country to sell the budget, saying, listen, this budget is an extension of the election platform, and you voted us in. In fact, Prime Minister Trudeau was on CBC Morning here on radio here in CBC this morning, and he actually was defending the deficit, and he was defending the way his government is spending the money. Take a listen.
In this budget, we have about $11 billion of new spending. The fact that it's on top of an economy that has gotten significantly worse than it was during the election period, for me, actually reinforces the need to spend on infrastructure and to create the kinds of opportunities that Canadians need to grow the economy.
$11 billion in new spending. What kind of reaction is that getting from the various groups who stand to benefit or perhaps won't?
Well, there's a generally positive reaction so far. One group that we did hear from this morning was the Assembly of First Nations, and they're very pleased with the spending in the budget, $8 billion towards First Nations people right across the country, money for education, for housing infrastructure, sewer, water, also money for the murdered and missing Indigenous women inquiry that is going to get started fairly soon. So we actually heard from Perry Bellegarde, who's the head of the Assembly of First Nations, and he said essentially this budget shows that the government is listening to what we've been telling them, that they're narrowing the gap between the way most Canadians live and the way a lot of First Nations people live. Here's a little bit more from Perry Bellegarde, who was saying, listen, we're going to make sure that this money gets spent properly.
We've got to work together with the chiefs and councils, working with government, but nothing will be unilaterally imposed. So we want to make sure there are standards. We want to make sure there are goals, there are objectives, to make sure that that gap starts to close. And that's what we want to assure Canadians. That's what we want to tell people. These are precious resources. But we want to make sure that they're utilized in the most effective manner.
Carol, another point that Bellegarde made is that young Aboriginal people are the fastest growing part of the Canadian population, and that they have real-life examples of how spending money on their education now can save hundreds of millions of dollars down the road in both health and social costs. So they say this budget goes a long way towards that.